In this video, we bring 11 more unique mind traps, fallacies, biases, and phenomena of psychology. You can't turn them off or delete them from your brain, but being one of the few people that can notice when they arise in your mind and knowing the situations and build your defenses. This is mainly inspired by the works of Nobel Prize-winning psychologist Daniel Kahneman and his amazing book, Thinking Fast and Slow. And we often talk about manipulations, psychology, philosophy, masculinity, meaning of life, not meaning of life and whatnot. Subscribe if you are interested in any of this. So let's begin this video. 1. The Dunning-Kruger effect. The Dunning-Kruger effect is a cognitive bias where individuals with low ability or knowledge in a specific area overestimate their own competence. Conversely, highly competent individuals may underestimate their relative competence, assuming tasks that are easy for them are also easy for others. For example, someone who has just started learning a new skill might believe they have already mastered it, not recognizing the complexity and depth of the subject. On the other hand, an expert might assume that because they find a task easy, others do too, and undervalue their own expertise. How to manage the Dunning-Kruger effect. Seek feedback. Ask for feedback from others to get an objective view of your abilities and knowledge. Stay humble. Recognize that there is always more to learn, and that expertise requires continuous effort and improvement. Educate yourself. Invest time in learning and practicing your skills to develop a more accurate self-assessment. By being aware of the Dunning-Kruger effect, you can strive for a more realistic understanding of your abilities and maintain a growth mindset. 2. Self-serving bias. Self-serving bias is a common way of thinking where people take credit for positive things but blame external factors for negative things. It's basically a mental shortcut that protects our self-esteem, though it can lead to victim mentality in the future, and that is not good. It is just a tendency to attribute positive outcomes to our own actions and abilities, while attributing negative outcomes to external factors beyond our control. This bias helps protect our self-esteem and maintain a positive self-image. For example, if you do well on a test, you might credit your intelligence and hard work. However, if you perform poorly, you might blame the test's difficulty or the lack of time to study rather than your own preparation. While self-serving bias can give our ego a boost, it can also hinder our ability to learn from mistakes and take responsibility for our actions. Here are some other aspects of self-serving bias to consider. It's normal. This bias is pretty widespread across cultures and ages. It's not always bad. Self-serving bias can motivate us to keep trying after setbacks. Be aware of it. Recognizing this bias can help you make fairer judgments about yourself and others. So, the next time you get a good grade, pat yourself on the back. But if things don't go your way, take a step back and see if there might be something you can learn from the experience. 3. Hindsight bias. Hindsight bias, also known as the knew-it-all-along phenomenon, is a mental shortcut that tricks us into thinking we could have predicted an event after it already happened. It's like watching a movie and knowing exactly what the characters should do differently, even though you had no idea how the plot would unfold in the theater. It can make you toxic and lead to trash talk, appearing as fool or insensitive. Here's the breakdown. What it is. The tendency to see past events as more predictable than they actually were. How it works. Once we know the outcome, we forget the uncertainty and remember only the information that seems relevant in hindsight. This creates a false memory of having been much more aware than we really were. Why it matters. Hindsight bias can make us overconfident in our ability to predict future events. It can also lead us to be overly critical of ourselves and others for past decision. For example, after a surprising election result, people might say things like, "I knew that candidate would win all along." But the truth is, most people probably weren't that certain beforehand. Hindsight bias is a common pitfall in many situations, including Monday morning quarterbacking, analyzing sports games with the benefit of hindsight, criticizing players' decisions after the outcome is known, financial decisions, believing we should have bought or sold a stock based on its current price, forgetting the uncertainty at the time, relationships, thinking we knew a relationship wouldn't work after a breakup, ignoring the complexities of the situation when we were together. By being aware of hindsight bias, we can make more balanced judgments about the past and avoid overconfidence in our predictions for the future. 4. Optimism bias. Optimism bias is the tendency to overestimate the likelihood of positive events happening to us and underestimate the likelihood of negative events. This bias leads us to believe that we are less likely to experience negative outcomes compared to others. For example, someone might believe they are less likely to get into a car accident than the average person, despite statistical evidence showing otherwise. Similarly, they might overestimate their chances of success in a new venture or underestimate the risks involved. How to manage optimism bias. Consider realistic scenarios. Take time to objectively evaluate the potential outcomes of a situation, considering both positive and negative possibilities. Seek diverse perspectives. Gather input from others who can provide alternative viewpoints and help balance overly optimistic assumptions. Plan for contingencies. Develop backup plans and strategies to mitigate risks in case things don't go as expected. Hold your horses. Patience and understanding is the key. By recognizing and addressing optimism bias, you can make more informed decisions and better prepare for potential challenges or setbacks. 5. Negativity bias. Negativity bias is the tendency for negative events and emotions to have a greater impact on our thoughts, feelings, and behaviors compared to positive events. This bias causes us to pay more attention to and remember negative experiences more vividly than positive ones. For example, receiving criticism or experiencing failure can have a stronger effect on our mood and self-esteem than receiving praise or achieving success. Similarly, negative news stories often have a more significant impact on us than positive ones. How to manage negativity bias. Practice gratitude. Cultivate a habit of focusing on and appreciating the positive aspects of your life, even in challenging times. Challenge negative thoughts. Question the validity of negative thoughts and consider alternative, more balanced perspectives. Balance news consumption. Limit exposure to negative news and seek out sources of positive or uplifting information. By actively working to counteract negativity bias, you can foster a more positive outlook on life and improve your overall well-being. 6. Availability heuristic. The availability heuristic is a mental shortcut where people make judgments about the likelihood of events based on how easily they can recall similar instances from memory. Essentially, if something readily comes to mind, people tend to perceive it as more common or probable. For example, if you recently read news articles about plane crashes, you might overestimate the likelihood of being involved in a plane crash, even though such incidents are rare. Conversely, if you can't recall any instances of car accidents, you might underestimate the risk of driving. Here's a breakdown of the availability heuristic. What it is: a mental shortcut that relies on the ease with which examples come to mind when evaluating a situation. How it works: if something is easy to recall, like a recent news story or a vivid personal experience, we tend to believe it's more common or more likely to happen again. This can lead to biased judgments because it ignores actual statistical data. Why it matters. The availability heuristic can lead us to make decisions based on fear-mongering headlines or personal anecdotes rather than on objective facts and statistics. 7. Sunk cost fallacy. The sunk cost fallacy is the tendency to continue investing resources, time, money, effort into a project or decision because of the cumulative investment already made, even if it no longer makes rational sense to do so. In other words, people are reluctant to abandon something they have already invested in, regardless of the potential for future losses. For example, if you've already spent a significant amount of money on a concert ticket but then realize you don't really want to attend, you might still go because you feel like you need to justify the money you've already spent. Or, this phenomena also can be seen when watching a series. If the series is 10 episodes and already watched 3, you most probably watch the next parts, even if you know next parts are not that good or your vacation is over. Now, how to manage sunk cost fallacy. Focus on future prospects. Evaluate decisions based on their potential future outcomes rather than past investments. Be willing to cut losses. Don't let past investments dictate future decisions. If a project or endeavor is no longer promising, be willing to abandon it. Seek external advice. Consult with others who are not emotionally invested in the situation to get a more objective perspective. By recognizing the sunk cost fallacy and making decisions based on future prospects rather than past investments, you can avoid wasting resources and make more rational choices. 8. Framing effect. The framing effect is a cognitive bias where people react differently to a particular choice, depending on how it is presented or framed. The way information is presented can significantly influence decision, even if the underlying information remains the same. For example, presenting the same medical treatment as having a 90% success rate is more likely to be perceived positively than presenting it as having a 10% failure rate, even though both statements convey the same information. Businesses often use these techniques. How to manage framing effect. Consider different perspectives. Evaluate choices from multiple angles to understand how framing may be influencing your perception. Focus on core information. Look beyond the framing to the essential facts and consider how they align with your goals and values. Question assumptions. Challenge the framing of information and consider alternative ways it could be presented. By being aware of the framing effect and critically evaluating how information is presented, you can make more informed decisions that align with your objectives. 9. Social proof. Social proof is a psychological phenomenon where people assume the actions of others in an attempt to reflect correct behavior for a given situation. Essentially, it's the tendency to follow the crowd or conform to the actions of others, especially when uncertain about what to do. For example, if you see a long line forming outside a restaurant, you might assume that it serves excellent food and decide to join the line, even if you haven't tried the restaurant before. Though this is often not bad, but analyzing the situation is crucial. You should not go to school or study just because people do that, right? Different types of social proof. There are various ways social proof can manifest. Celebrity endorsements. Seeing a famous person using a product makes it seem more desirable. Customer reviews and ratings. Positive online reviews and high star ratings give potential customers confidence in a product. Social media buzz. A trending hashtag or widespread discussion about a product or service can generate interest. Number of users. A large customer base or follower count implies popularity and trustworthiness. Expert opinions. Recommendations from professionals in a field can influence our decisions. By understanding social proof, we can become more aware of its influence on our own behavior and be more critical of persuasive tactics used by marketers and others. 10. Loss aversion. Loss aversion is a cognitive bias where people prefer avoiding losses over acquiring equivalent gains. In other words, the pain of losing something is psychologically more significant than the pleasure of gaining something of equal value. This bias can influence decision, leading individuals to take actions to avoid losses, even if it means passing up potential gains. For example, studies have shown that people are more likely to take risks to avoid losing $100 than they are to take risks to gain $100. This tendency to prioritize avoiding losses can impact various areas of life, including financial decisions, career choices, and interpersonal relationships, though this isn't often bad or harmful. Examples of loss aversion. Here are some common examples of how loss aversion plays out. Discount sales. Signs that advertise discounts, like 50% off, trigger our fear of missing out on a good deal and losing money by not buying. Free trials with automatic renewals. Signing up for a free trial feels like a gain, but the fear of losing access after the trial, aversion to the loss, can lead people to forget to cancel and end up paying. Warranty pitches, highlighting the potential consequences of a product malfunction, the loss you might experience, can convince people to buy an extended warranty. Overcoming loss aversion. Being aware of loss aversion is the first step to overcoming its influence. Here are some tips. Consider the framing. Reframe decisions to focus on potential gains instead of avoiding losses. Focus on the long term. Don't let the fear of short-term losses cloud your judgment about long-term benefits. Set realistic expectations. Don't expect to win every time. Focus on making sound decisions based on information, not just avoiding losses. By understanding loss aversion, you can make more balanced decisions and avoid being swayed by tactics that exploit this powerful psychological bias. 11. Winner's effect. The winner's effect refers to the phenomenon where winning an initial competition or challenge boosts confidence and increases the likelihood of winning subsequent challenges. This effect is attributed to the surge in confidence and the physiological changes that accompany a win. A study where they took two rats. One was weak, another one was strong, but they drugged the strong one to reduce its capacity. So the weaker rat won the fight. But the game only started. A few times later, they make the weaker rat face one more, stronger rat. But surprisingly, it won once again. In the next round, they once more drugged the opponent, this time to enhance its strength, and still the weaker rat won. This shows the winner's effect. To be more specific, affirmations. First win gave it a confidence boost, a testosterone hit that we need for winning. What do you think cheerleaders' job in games? When we win, we often go for streaks. It also goes the opposite way. When we lose, that also makes a streak. So I would advise, take a break when you face a lose. This also shows why you should watch motivational videos or podcasts and read books. Make a positive environment around you. Now we would like you to like and subscribe our channel. Comment down your thoughts on this. We will glad to hear from you and pin down the best and most inspiring one. Now, after commenting, click on the right of your screen to watch the next video. Peace.